So we are investigating inequalities today. So in a table of values, I want you to generate a set of numbers that add up to 10. When you're ready, I want you to plot the points on the coordinate grid. And if you want, you can start thinking about what do you notice about your line? Could you create an equation to represent this line? So pause the video, fill this out, and then press play when you're ready to hear this taken up. Okay, so if I'm generating two numbers that add to 10, numbers that I might pick, like I might say 5 and 5 add up to 10. I might say that 3 and 7 add up to 10. I might say that 10 and 0 add up to 10. I could say 0 and 10 add up to 10. But I could also do numbers that maybe didn't come straight to your mind, like -1 and 11 add up to 10. Or I could have like -3 on this side and 13 on this side, and those add up to 10 as well. So once you're finished doing that, hopefully you've already gone through and plotted your points on the coordinate grid. So I'm going to plot those right now. So I've got 5 and 5. I've got 3 and 7. I've got 10 and 0. I've got 0 and 10. I've got -1 and 11. And then unfortunately my 13 and -3 wouldn't be here, but I could kind of guess that it might be somewhere about there. And then I'm going to connect those. I can see that they actually form a line. So I'm going to use, hopefully you have a ruler. So you're going to connect those with a ruler. And then I want you to kind of write down some of the things that you notice about your line, and can you create an equation to represent that line. So if you haven't already done so, I want you to push pause and I want you to write those down. So things that I notice about this line when I look at it, well, it's linear. So when I have something like x plus y equals a number, I'm just going to say a number because it doesn't matter what number is there. It makes sense that this is linear because the exponents on both of those variables is 1. So that's a linear relationship. It is decreasing, meaning that as I look at my line and I read left to right, just like I would a book, my line is going in a downwards direction. You might also notice that the x-intercepts and the y-intercepts can be seen, and they're kind of a unique number when I look at this, because if I look at my x-intercept, it is 10, and if I look at my y-intercept, it's also 10. So when I'm talking about my x-intercept, I'm talking about where does my line cross my x-axis. And when I say my y-intercept, I'm asking where does my line cross my y-axis, which we've already talked lots about. Okay, so and maybe you've created an equation. So if I created equations, some people in the past have seen two different possibilities. So because it says generate a set of numbers that add up to 10, if I take my two numbers x plus y, if I add them together, it equals 10. Or, I'm going to zoom in here, some people might have come up with, because we've already done equations of lines, the fact that my b value, my y-intercept is 10, and then I'm going down 1 and over 1 to get to my next point. So I've got a rise over run of -1 over 1, which is just -1. So I could write this as y equals -1x, because I'm going, my rate of change is down 1, and plus 10. So there we go. So those two things. So maybe in a couple minutes, maybe you can think about, are these equivalent? And we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so now I want you to think about this one. In a table of values, generate a set of numbers that add to a number between 1 and 9, and then plot your points on the coordinate grid. Once you're finished that, you're going to compare those to x plus y equals 10, and how are they the same and how are they different. So if you haven't already done so, I want you to pause the video and I want you to try this. I'm going to choose to pick two numbers that add up to 6. So I might say 0 and 6 add up to 6. I might say that 4 and 2 add up to 6. I might say that 3 and 3 add up to 6. I might also say that 7 and -1 add up to 6. Or I could say 6 and 0, maybe 8 and and negative 2. Once you've done that, you're plotting your points. So I've got 0 and 6. I've got 4 and 2. I've got 3 and 3. I've got 7 and negative 1. I've got 6 and 0. And I've got 8 and negative 2. So once you've done that, you're now going to take your ruler and you're going to connect your points. Okay. So the two questions that I asked you to think about were, how does it compare to x plus y equals 10? In particularly, how are they the same and how are they different? Okay. Well, again, I'm still working with a linear relation, meaning that I can draw a line on this graph. And in this case, it is still a decreasing relationship. Well, I can say that it's a decreasing relationship. This equation we haven't worked too much with in the past, but I'm going to try to get the y by itself on this side of the equation. So to do that, I'm going to take away x from both sides of the equation. So I end up with y is equal to negative x plus 6. If I look here, my rate of change is negative 1. So that's saying that I have a decreasing relationship. Okay, but what is different between my x plus y equals 10 equation and my x plus y equals 6 equation? Well, if I look at my graph, my x-intercept and my y-intercepts are different. In this case, my x-intercept is 6 and my y-intercept is also 6. Let's think about why this happens. I'm just going to draw a little table here. X-intercept, y-intercept. So when I look at all of my x-intercept points, no matter where they are, so I might pick this one, for example, and I can say this is negative 10 and 0. This one here, I've got negative 2 and 0. Here I've got 4 and 0. I can see a pattern in that my x-intercepts all have a number for their x value and a 0 for their y value. So if I have an equation, x plus y equals a number, if my y value is 0, that tells me that my x plus 0 is equal to that number and that my x is always going to equal that number. Similarly, if I look at all my y values, if I've got 0 and 10, I've got 0 and 8, I've got 0 and negative 6, we'll notice that all of my x values for those relationships are 0 with a number in my second spot. So if I have my x plus y equals a number again, now I'm saying that my x is going to be 0. So I end up with 0 plus y equals a number, and y equals that number. So anytime I have an equation in the form of x plus y equals, and I'm just going to say k, where k is any number, my x and my y-intercepts are going to be that k value. Okay, we're going to do one more investigation. So we're going to revisit the line x plus y equals 10, and I've already placed that on the grid. I want you to select some points that are above the line and points that are below the line, and I want you to predict what's going to happen when you look at those points. Or is there any patterns that happen? So press pause and do some investigating. Okay, so when I'm talking about above the line, I'm talking about this part of the graph. Oh, that one's hard to see. Let me get a different color highlighter. Let's see if I can make it. This part of my graph. Okay, so if I pick some points in that upper part of the graph, so for example, I might pick 10 and 10. That's above the line. Or I might pick the point 6 and 8. That's above the line. On the other hand, if I go and I pick points that are below the line, so somewhere down here, I might pick something like 4 and 2. And it doesn't matter what points you pick. I'm going to have -2 and -2. So if I look at these points that are above the line, when I add them up, 10 plus 10 gives me 20. 6 plus 8 gives me 14. Notice that points above the line are greater than 10. So I can write this section of my graph as x plus y is greater than 10. If I look at the points below the line, so the ones that are in my pink section, 4 plus 2 gives me 6. -2 plus -2 gives me -4. These are numbers that are less than 10. So I can say in this section that x plus y is less than 10. Could you guess what happens with any value that's on the line? Because we've already kind of investigated that. So this is what we call inequalities on the graph. So sometimes we're asked to find when two numbers added together are higher or lower than a point or in comparison to a line. So you're going to practice that next.